Good evening, and welcome to our Interstate 41 Project virtual public meeting. I'm Tom Buchholz, Northeast Region Project Development Manager. I would like to welcome you to our project that covers from Highway 96 Wisconsin Avenue on the south to County F Schuring Road to the north in Outagamie and Brown counties. I want to thank you for taking time to be part of our public meeting. We do value your input and want your input on this valuable project in Northeast Wisconsin. Tonight we'll introduce our project team. We'll give over I-41 project overview. We'll go over project purpose and need, the environmental analysis that we'll be performing with the project. We'll be covering alternatives that we'll be proposing with the project. And we have a lot of information on alternatives, especially at the interchanges to present tonight, our project schedule, and finally next steps in the process. Our project team starts with Colleen Harris, our Northeast Region Project Director, myself as Project Development Chief, Chad DeGrave, our Design Project Supervisor, Scott Ebel, our Design Project Manager, will be presenting the information tonight, Brian Lipke, our Planning Project Manager, Kathy Van Price, our Environmental Coordinator, and Missy Cook, our Communications Manager. Our team here is assembled in the Northeast Region ready to answer your questions and address comments with the project. There's a number of ways you can reach us. You can email us through the email that you see on the screen. It's at dotdtsdneri41@dotwi.gov. And I want to highlight that it's I-41. At our meeting in May, there was some confusion on the email address, so just note the address there, and we'll show that throughout the presentation. You can also mail us comments, and the address is given there on the screen, and you can also use the chat button and on the YouTube. We have staff here that will monitor the chat button, and we'll answer questions at the end of the presentation. So with that, we want your input, and I'll hand it over to Scott to go over the rest of the presentation.
Thank you, Tom. Before I get going on too much of the presentation, I do want to also mention that we kind of have our presentation in two halves. The first half will be the main presentation, and then we will be answering questions and going through comments, as Tom just mentioned. And then following that, we also have a second half where we'll run through the displays that we would typically have at an in-person meeting in order to get those displays into the record and also to provide some additional in-depth detail if people want to hang on a little bit longer. With that, I will start to go through the presentation. As Tom mentioned, this project runs from Highway 96 in Outagamie County up to County Highway F in Schuring Road in Brown County. It is a 23-mile long corridor. We have 8 service interchanges along that corridor. We also have one system interchange with Highway 441. We have an additional service road interchange along Highway 441 and County Highway 00 that could be affected by alternatives at the system interchange. And we also have a potential new interchange related to Brown County's Southern Arterial study. The purpose and need for the project is to provide necessary roadway capacity to serve the existing and projected volumes along the corridor. It is to improve safety and the operational efficiency of the roadway. It is to provide balance between the regional traffic and local access needs. And we also have some additional purpose with the project to update the safety and weight enforcement facility, or as we sometimes call it, a SWEF, and also potentially co-locate that with the Northeast Region State Patrol post. There are 4 primary build alternatives, or there are a number of build alternatives that are being considered. One of those is a 4-lane modernization, which will also include our looking at the potential for hard shoulder running. that's running running traffic on the shoulders during peak hours in order to get additional capacity out of that cross section. It includes a 6-lane modernization or an expansion of the number of lanes that's out there today. It includes interchange improvements, which we will go over in detail for each of the interchanges along the corridor. It will include overpass improvements on most of the bridges that aren't interchanges but do run over or under even I-41. And it will also include a segment of the Brown County South Bridge Connectors study area, or one of their study segments as part of this project, pending the resolution of their record of decision. Build alternatives will also consider proposed bike and pedestrian accommodations, and a lot of these will be according to input that we get from the communities on local bike and pedestrian plans. Other project elements being considered include a combined safety and weight enforcement facility and Northeast Region State Patrol post. They also include, particularly under an expansion alternative, the potential for a new salt shed at Outagamie County, their public works area south of the landfill off of Highway 00. And we would also be looking to address pavement needs at existing park and ride facilities that are along the corridor. We have 3 of those right now at County Highway E, County N, and County Highway S. So I'm going to talk now about our alternative screening process, how we evaluate these alternatives, and some of that criteria that we use. So we will assess alternative effectiveness, environmental impacts, real estate needs, and construction costs. We will gather input on alternatives from the public, from tribes, local governments, and our resource agencies. We will identify a preferred alternative. We will document the screening process in the environmental assessment, and we will determine at that point the final right-of-way needs, the final project program costs. Want to mention that environmental justice is included in that evaluation process. Executive Order 12898, and environmental justice from the 90s has typically been required on projects such as this. The analysis requires us to determine any disproportionately high and adverse effects to low-income and minority populations. We will develop effective public participation strategies and assure meaningful representation in the process beginning at the earliest possible time. We'll also be looking at impacts to the environment, including impacts to air quality, agriculture, business and economics, noise, groundwater, floodplains, cultural resources, stormwater, surface water, threatened and endangered species, wetlands, and hazmat. I again just want to mention another reminder to please submit any questions or comments you have on the project or the presentation by emailing us at the DOT DTSD NER I-41@dot.wi.gov or by using the chat button in YouTube Live, or also by after the meeting by using mail-in comments. An additional environmental concern to highlight is noise. We know that noise is very important to many residents along this corridor. Want to point out that we are currently in the phase, that first phase identified on this slide, where we will be using traffic noise models to predict future sound levels. And based on this prediction, after we've identified our preferred alternative, we will be determining where it is reasonable and feasible for barrier locations to be included. And that information would be presented at the public hearing scheduled for next year. Public meetings will then be held during the final design to view more detailed noise wall options. Adjacent landowners and residents and benefited areas will be able to vote to approve or deny noise mitigation measures. And a simple majority is needed to approve noise barriers at locations. And then ultimately, if approved, the barrier construction would then occur as part of the project. We have a number of alternatives that we'll be looking at to treat the area in between closely spaced service interchanges and between service interchanges and system interchanges. So I want to identify those right now. One of those alternatives is an auxiliary lane alternative. An example of this would be the condition between Ballard Road and 441 as it is today, where we have an additional lane that parallels the through lanes of mainline traffic to facilitate weaving of vehicles. There's a second alternative between interchange ramps called a collector distributor roadway, and that is where we get traffic either that's entering or exiting the ramps onto a parallel roadway to the mainline roadway, so that those weaving movements between vehicles destined for different locations are occurring off of the main line of traffic, typically resulting in better operation and safety for the main flow of traffic. And then there is a third alternative that we're looking at in a couple locations called a braided ramp, where instead of allowing the weaving to occur, we are instead using a structure to have one direction of traffic move over the top or underneath the other direction of traffic between the exit and entrance ramps, so that weaving does not occur, so we don't have any operational or safety issues related to that weaving. Alternatives for our main line of the roadway include a 6-lane alternative. This would be 3 lanes of traffic in each direction, with the potential for an additional auxiliary lane between some of the closely spaced interchanges. Along with this, we are also looking at a 4-lane typical section alternative. This would be essentially reconstructing the facility very similar to what's out there today, with again using auxiliary lanes or some other treatment between closely spaced interchanges. We also have typical sections to show our other treatments between interchanges. At the top is showing our 6-lane alternative with a collector distributor road. This again is where, to point out, we have our main flow of traffic, and then we also have that parallel roadway to handle ramp exit and entrance traffic off of the main flow of traffic. And then this treatment between interchanges can also be done for between interchanges on the 4-lane mainline alternative. At this point, I'm going to start going through specific interchange alternatives, for the most part heading from the south side of the corridor to the north side of the corridor. We'll start at Highway 15 and 00, or Highway 15 and County 00 interchange with I-41, with 2 different diamond interchange alternatives. One of those would be a traditional signal interchange. The other one would, instead of being signalized, would include roundabouts for the ramp terminals. The costs here are very equivalent. The difference in impact is primarily real estate with the roundabout alternatives. We also have a diverging diamond interchange alternative that we're looking at for this interchange. Again, costs are very comparable, and there would be some minor real estate impacts here in line with the signal alternative, but less than the roundabout alternative. We also have a partial Cloverleaf interchange alternative for this interchange. This configuration is very similar to what is out there today, involving the loop ramp configuration on the west side of the mainline highway. On the east side of the highway here, we would be going to a more traditional intersection format, both for movements, essentially replacing the free flow condition that's out there today for traffic that's headed to the east, so that we don't have that weaving condition between the interchange and Blue Mountain Drive. And along with that, in that similar configuration with the partial Cloverleaf instead of signals, we would also have as an alternative using roundabouts for those intersections. At the Highway 47 or Richmond Street interchange, we have three primary alternatives. Two of those are shown on the screen here. These are diamond interchanges with either signalized intersections for the ramp terminals or with roundabout intersections for the ramp terminals. We'll point out that the roundabout alternative does have a larger real estate footprint. I do also want to point out with a number of these alternatives, we are looking at the potential to eliminate access from Association Lane onto Highway 47. It's currently a right-in, right-out access. So we are looking at the potential, if there are potential safety or operational benefits to doing that. We are also looking at the diverging diamond interchange as an alternative at Richmond Street. Comparable costs to the other interchange alternatives and comparable real estate impacts as well, kind of between the signalized and the roundabout alternatives. For the County Highway E or Ballard Road interchange, we're again looking at a similar range of alternatives. Shown here is a signalized interchange or intersection alternative, which would be very similar to what's out there today, accounting for any additional capacity that might be needed. Also shown with this, as part of this, is an auxiliary lane configuration moving east to the system interchange. And the next slide also shows the signalized alternative, but shows this with a collector distributor system to the east. And I'll have additional slides that point out the differences between those two. We are also looking at a roundabout alternative within the interchange instead of signals. The primary difference here in impacts would be some additional real estate. And we are also looking at the diverging diamond interchange alternative here, which again is very comparable, would have less impact than the roundabout on real estate. All right. Looking at alternatives for how we're treating traffic between the interchanges, wanted to show a number of alternatives for how we do that. The first of these, and the one with what would be the largest footprint impact, would be to use a braided ramp alternative here. To explain a little bit how this works, on the left side of the screen would be the Ballard Road interchange. On the right side of the screen would be the Highway 441 system interchange. If traffic coming from Ballard Road wants to get onto I-41 heading northbound, they would stay at the left-hand side of the split, and then they would cross over traffic from 41 that's heading ultimately heading to 441 southbound instead of having to weave with that traffic, and then would thus then just enter the traffic along with other I-41 traffic that's continuing northbound. Alternatives for the system interchange itself include a kind of a replace-in-kind alternative, very similar in configuration to what's out there today at the system interchange. This one shows a replace-in-kind alternative with a collector-distributor roadway, which does have some additional real estate impacts associated with it. Of note here in this layout, we are reducing the number of lanes across I-41 on the WIS 441 structures in order to reduce the number of structures and also hopefully improve some safety from what's out there today. We also have an alternative that is very similar to what is out there today, would include an auxiliary lane between the Ballard Road interchange and the 441 interchange, would include the two ramps in a very similar location and configuration that's out there today. And I will also point out with all of these alternatives for the 441 system interchange that we are proposing to replace the French Road bridge over I-41 and maintain that connection on French Road between what would be Evergreen to the north and County Highway 00 to the south. We are also looking at some higher speed ramp alternatives for the system interchange. Shown on the screen right now is a layout of ramps that would be at a 55 mile an hour design speed. Having higher speed ramps compared to the mainline speed typically improves safety, as you don't have that reduction in speed that's necessary for traffic as they go into those interchange maneuvers. As you can see on this display, there would be additional real estate impacts associated with a higher speed ramp, kind of a free flow condition alternative. Here again is that alternative laid out with, or shown in an isometric viewpoint. This would be a multi-level interchange, similar in concept to some of the other, I'll say, recently reconstructed interchanges at the I-41 and 441 in Menasha, or Highway 29 and I-41 up in Green Bay. Shown on this display is a 60 mile an hour a flyover alternative. The higher speed ramps in this alternative do have some additional real estate impacts associated with it. I do want to point out that where we've identified what would be real estate impacts, that there could be opportunities still to further refine the design or use mitigation such as retaining walls in order to decrease the amount of real estate that would be required. Typically where we've noted construction costs or estimated costs, those costs are for construction only and do not include real estate costs, which ultimately would be assessed as part of the ultimate selection of the alternatives. Shown here is again that 60 mile an hour flyover alternative from an isometric point of view. A little bit more, or shown here are ways that are alternatives for treating traffic between on Wisconsin 441 and between County Highway 00, which is on the left side of the screen, and the 441 system interchange on the right hand side of the screen. One of those alternatives is to use auxiliary lanes, which is very similar to the condition that is out there today. In terms of how the Highway 00 interchange would look under this alternative, it would be very similar, essentially no change from what is out there today. There'd be very little real estate impacts associated with this alternative. But I do want to point out with some of the higher speed, the higher speed ramp alternatives in particularly, we are reducing the available distance that we have for vehicles to weave to get either from 41 onto 441 or from 441 onto Highway 00. So we are looking at some other alternatives that to help increase that weave distance or otherwise mitigate that. One of those alternatives would be a partial cloverleaf alternative. That's what on the slide what Parklow refers to as partial cloverleaf. This would basically move the exit to 00 for 441 southbound south of the interchange or to the south side of the interchange instead of being on the north side. By moving it further south and using a loop ramp configuration, we are able to increase that weave distance available for vehicles headed south. This does have some real estate impacts associated with it and some additional cost. Under this consideration, we likely would not do anything with the northbound direction. That reduction in weave distance is not as much as on the southbound direction with most of the alternatives. This is that partial cloverleaf alternative for 00 laid out in an isometric view. This is as a third alternative to handle traffic between 00 and I-41 along 441. We would also be looking at a braided ramp alternative here. This alternative does have a significantly higher footprint, but it does also have significant potential safety and operational benefits. I will switch to a isometric point of view to help describe how this would operate. As a for instance, if traffic that was at 00 and wanted to get onto 441 to ultimately get onto 41 northbound, would take the ramp or get on the ramp, would stay on the right hand side of the road and would continue and merge with 441 traffic that is already only destined for 41 northbound. So they do not have to weave with traffic that is trying to get to I-41 southbound as vehicles do today. Similarly, traffic on 00 that wants to ultimately get to 41 southbound would stay to the left at that first split, would then merge with 441 traffic that itself has already split into and includes only 441 traffic destined for 41 southbound. So that weaving that occurs today does not occur, which improves safety and operations. I do also want to point out with this alternative that it could be applied not necessarily to both directions of traffic. It could be applied or selected as an alternative for just one direction of traffic. So for instance, if the southbound weave condition is worse operationally or safety-wise than the northbound condition, it could be applied in only the southbound direction and not necessarily be required to also be applied to the northbound direction. Continuing to move north at the County Highway N interchange, at this location, we are primarily looking to keep a configuration similar to what's out there today. We are proposing to maintain signalized intersections at this location. We would be replacing the pavement and the ramps, and we would be replacing portions of County Highway N to the north and south of the interchange as would be needed, both to replace any older pavement up to the adjacent intersections, and also would be coordinating with the local community on any additional capacity that would be expected here. For the most part, is trying to minimize any real estate impacts, especially to the south. This is a very built-up area. At the Wisconsin Highway 55 interchange, again, we would not be looking to make any significant changes at this interchange. This interchange was recently reconstructed to include roundabouts. So we would basically be reconstructing the ramps to the limits of the previous project. We would also be looking at the potential to increase the number of lanes between the roundabouts underneath the interchange in order to make sure that Highway 55 is handling the traffic it would expect to get. As part of this, also want to point out here that the bridges for I-41 over Highway 55 and also over Maloney Road would also be reconstructed as part of a mainline reconstruction alternative. At County Highway J, we would again be proposing as an alternative a fairly minimal change from the existing condition. This interchange was reconstructed, I believe, in 2010 with roundabouts. We would again be looking to reconstruct the ramps up to the limits of the previous project so that the ramps would be all new pavement. We would also be looking to replace the County Highway J structure over I-41 and would be working with the local communities in terms of potential needs there for future bike pedestrian access, that sort of thing. At the County Highway U interchange, we have a number of alternatives as well. County Highway U, the first alternative I'm showing here is a diamond interchange alternative. This is very similar to the condition that's out there today. We would just basically be replacing and realigning a segment of County Highway U to make sure that it can handle anticipated traffic growth in the area. We would be under this not anticipating too much for additional real estate impacts. We also have another alternative for County Highway U that we're calling a reversed diamond interchange, where we would essentially change which road is the overpass road here. Currently, I-41 goes over County Highway U. Under this alternative, County Highway U would go over I-41. This has some potential safety and maintenance benefits. It would be potentially easier to keep ice off of I-41 without having that structure go over the top of County Highway U, and it would also improve the geometrics of the southbound entrance ramp from U to I-41, in that you wouldn't be going up as steep of a hill when you're trying to make that merge onto I-41. We have another alternative for County Highway U, where instead of replacing the intersections nearly at the configuration they are today, we would look at roundabouts for the ramp terminals. By adding in the ramp terminals here, roundabouts for the ramp terminals here, it would require us to push the frontage roads out further so that we have appropriate spacing between the frontage roads and the ramp terminals, and that moving out of the frontage roads would have some additional real estate impacts associated with it. And as another alternative for the interchange at U, and it's kind of a modification of the first interchange alternative shown, where The interchange itself would remain very similar to the condition it is today, but we would relocate the frontage road on the west side of the highway so that it was offset from the opposing frontage road and would allow for better vision of other vehicles traveling south on County Highway U. Moving north to County Highway S, or Freedom Road. Shown here are two different diamond interchange alternatives. One of those is an alternative which would be very similar to the condition that's out there today. We'd be moving the ramps, the ramp terminals a little bit further away from the frontage roads in order to increase that spacing a little bit. But otherwise, we wouldn't be anticipating any significant impacts with this alternative. There is an additional diamond interchange alternative where we would replace the ramp terminals as well as the frontage road intersections with roundabouts. So this would be very similar in concept to, say, like Lineville Road, just north of Green Bay off of 41. This alternative would have some additional real estate impacts associated with it. We also have a couple of additional alternatives to address the long-term safety or operational issues that are potentially there, leaving the frontage roads as close as they are to the interchange terminals. One of those shown here would move out the frontage roads on both the east and west side, as you can see on the display. It would involve some additional real estate or some significant real estate in order to do this. There is also an additional alternative that, identical on the west side, would change a little bit the configuration of the interchange or the frontage roads on the east side by having the frontage road tie into, I believe this is Hickory Road here, and then by realigning the frontage road on the north side of the interchange to tie directly into that. There would be additional real estate impacts associated with this, but we wanted to at least explore this alternative through this process because of the potential long-term benefits to safety and operation at the interchange. All right. That addresses the interchanges that are already out there. But we do have a potential new interchange along the corridor here associated with Brown County's Southern Arterial South Bridge Connector study. Their Tier 1 final EIS record of decision for their study is anticipated in October of 2020. They've identified their alternative 2, the Rockland Red Maple South Bridge Corridor, as their preferred alternative in their draft environmental impact statement. And DOT or WSDOT has committed to building the new interchange at I-41 as part of the I-41 project if that is included in Brown County's record of decision. So shown here is a layout that would include the new interchange for the Southern Arterial Corridor. I do want to point out that between the Lawrence Drive on the east side and I believe this is County Highway EB on the west side, this is segment 1 in Brown County's study. We would be, under this project, clearing the environmental impacts, what we would call the Tier 2 environmental impacts for this entire segment under the current project. That would be the identification of the more detailed environmental and real estate impacts. So you can see on this display, the new interchange at this location would involve relocating the frontage roads in order to get better spacing between the frontage roads and the ramp terminals. It would involve a new alignment for the roadway in order to connect over to the existing highway facilities on the west side of the road. There are some resource impacts associated with that. The Hemlock Creek runs through this area and would require either a box culvert or a new bridge structure. Schwabenon Creek also runs on the east side and would have to be examined on whether or not it would be impacted as well. Shown here is a similar corridor with a few different differences in terms of how the tie-in to the existing highway facility is managed on the west side. And this alternative also shows roundabouts at the frontage roads and the interchange terminals instead of signalized intersections. As part of this project, we're also looking at alternatives for replacing the existing safety and weight enforcement facility, which is an aged facility that needs replacement and modernization. One of those alternatives would essentially replace the facility at its existing location that it's at today, which is just south of County Highway U. The County Highway U interchange is just off to the right side of the screen here. As part of these alternatives, it's also being looked at to co-locate that facility with a new State Patrol headquarters post for the Northeast region. Their current post building down in Fond du Lac is also a very aging facility and continues to need lots of maintenance and improvements. We are also looking at a southbound alternative for the weight enforcement facility. The location for a southbound facility would be just south of County Highway JJ. The County Highway J interchange would be just to the left of the screen here. There would be some additional real estate impacts associated with a southbound facility instead of a northbound facility. But the primary reason that we are looking at a southbound facility is that southbound is the port of entry direction from Green Bay. So we thought it would be best to include that direction as a second alternative to the existing northbound facility today. All right. Talking a little bit about project schedule and key milestones for the project. This meeting is part of our public involvement meeting process. We had our first round of meetings, both local officials and public informational meetings back in the spring. This is that second round. Following this, we will be looking to complete our environmental assessment by June of 2021. From there, we would be looking to hold a public hearing in July of 2021, getting final environmental approval by November of 2021. Looking further out then, we would be looking to perform our final engineering 2022 through 2024 and potentially beyond. Additionally, we would then looking to be doing our right-of-way acquisition, utilities, things like that from 2023 and beyond, with construction ultimately to be determined. As far as next steps, we want to try to establish trust and credibility within the community. That's the purpose of these meetings today. We want to be as transparent as we can in this process, and we want to seek public input at our project milestones and in between project milestones as well. We will ultimately be doing business outreach as we move closer to construction. And we want to provide businesses with firsthand information at project milestones as well. Not mentioned here, but something that we have done and are in the process of continuing to do is meeting with the counties and municipalities along the project to determine, specific concerns that they may have, whether it be, what's their plan for bicycle and pedestrian access in the future, to, their input on how we are handling traffic with some of these interchange alternatives. Next steps for keeping you informed. There will be a recording of tonight's YouTube live presentation that will be available after the presentation is done. The meeting displays that we would have had at an in-person meeting will be available to download and view on the project website. We will continue to get upcoming public meeting announcements out to the public. We encourage you, if you're watching this and are not subscribed to the project email list, to do so. And we also encourage you to send an email to project staff or to the question and comment email address, or using the YouTube live chat button, as we've discussed before. And again, the slides here again to remind us to do that. Again, DOT, DTSD, NER, I-41. Or using the chat button in YouTube Live. I'd also ask that people attending, please, if you are attending, even if you don't have a question or a comment, please email us or send a note in the YouTube Live chat box, just kind of stating your name and that you watched the presentation or attended the online presentation. We like to keep a record of that, so that we can record your attendance at the project. Communicator contacts for the project include Missy Cook, the communications manager, whose phone number and address are on the slide, and also myself, Scott Ebel, I'm the design project manager for the project. My number and email address is on the slide as well. We can also be reached by mail at our region address here. With that, we're going to open things up for answering questions that have either come through email or through the YouTube Live chat box. As a reminder, following the question period, I will be going through the additional slides or displays that we would have had in an in-person meeting, just so that we can hopefully provide some more detail and get those displays into the record.
Okay, so this is just our opportunity. We'll go through the questions that have been submitted. Either Scott or myself will answer them. So if you think of something, feel free to put it in the chat box or send in this email. Our staff is monitoring that. So again, just feel free to put some questions in there. And again, we really ask it also, whether you have a question or not, that you send us an email or in the chat box your name, address, and email, just a record of attendance that we have. So first question up, again, I think we kind of answered it. Any update on the relocation of the State Patrol regional headquarters from Fond du Lac to Wrightstown? And what we showed earlier in the slides is there's two options we're looking at. One northbound at the existing facility, and then there's one southbound by County JJ, and looking at options of a combined facility of the Way in Motion facility with the regional State Patrol office. So again, we appreciate public feedback on a preference if it's northbound or southbound. Another question came in, what are the limits of the expansion project? And that was one of the early slides. The expansion starts on the south end at Highway 96 at Wisconsin Avenue and goes north to tie into the 6th lane that's south of Shearing Road up in Brown County.
Maybe clarify that a little bit. We wouldn't be proposing at this time or thinking that there would be significant changes that would be needed at Highway 96 itself as part of this project or at Shearing Road itself as part of this project. Certainly we would be examining the interchanges to make sure everything functions, but those project limits are kind of between the interchanges and not including or inclusive of those terminal interchanges that we keep mentioning.
Yeah, the goal is to, look at addressing the main line 41 footprint between those two interchanges. Any plans on sound walls, noise mitigation, specifically between Shearing Road and Highway S? And again, I think more general, Scott, you want to just reiterate kind of what we covered in some slides
Sure.
where we're at
Yeah.
early on?
Yep. Where we are in the noise process right now is, we have taken sound readings along the corridor. We did that this summer, and we used those sound readings along with the traffic at the time and then the projected traffic in order to project out what those volumes ultimately would be under a build alternative. But that analysis has not yet been done. It won't get done until we're closer to selecting a preferred alternative. At that point, we would be doing that analysis, and you would see the results of that analysis and whether or not a new barrier is what we call reasonable and feasible and likely to be included in the project. You would see that at our environmental assessment hearing that we would have planned for July of 2021.
Question came in, just asking about the cost of the project from lowest to highest. And at this point, we're still evaluating alternatives. We haven't put together, a detailed project cost estimate in that fashion, so I really can't answer that question at time. When we get through this and gather input and get a preferred alternative, we're going to work through a cost estimate workshop and review to really try to get an estimate that we can share to the public. It's just too early in the process to really give you a number at this point. So good question, just a little early as we work through the project.
Yeah, and I do want to point out, because on some of the slides, there are costs included on some of those slides. Typically, where we've included costs, it is for, as I said before, the construction only, and is primarily used at this point as kind of a comparison tool between alternatives to know if one alternative is more expensive than another alternative. It doesn't include things like real estate, utility moves, design costs, construction oversight, a lot of those additional costs that are part of the project, but not necessarily what we're being used for comparing alternatives at this time.
Yeah, and I just clarified too earlier, Scott, you said, we're assessing real estate costs. That does not mean that we're, working with any local units of government to assess cost back to the property owner, with project improvements. This project is proposed by WISDOT, just to clarify that.
Oh, yeah.
Another question, any alternatives to the new proposed South Ridge interchange? The examples shown seem to really disrupt the business and frontage road access on the east side of 41. And this is I think referring to the Brown County proposed interchange. And what we show on that east side is just some alternatives with the frontage roads, and that will have to work with, Brown County and the local units of government and the businesses in the area to come up with, what's the best plan to do that. So what we showed is some options at this point, but certainly there's, room to move accesses and to minimize any disruption in that area on the design.
Yeah, that is a good point too, just to add on to that for this location and then also for others where we've shown alternatives, we are not at this point, we're not precluding other alternatives, and that's where we're really looking for feedback and comments to know if there are potential other alternatives that we should be looking at out there still.
Okay. Did you or would you look at spreading the northbound and southbound lanes where the current weigh station is and putting it in between the lanes so you can choose which to monitor? And yes, we did consider that, of actually putting the weigh in motion facility into the median, but we didn't present it to the public really because the cost was and the impacts were far too great. To get a way station into the median, you have to basically split northbound and southbound by 300 feet. And in these areas, there's a continuous frontage road, so you can imagine moving the frontage roads out. And with the development that's already occurred on the frontage road, it really had some pretty huge impacts that we just didn't think were worth the cost and expense. So it was something we considered, but we're not putting forth as an alternative due to the impacts. The traffic at this time, this summer, may have diminished due to the pandemic. Any considerations for traffic load being less?
Yes, I guess just to put people's minds at ease, the traffic volumes that are being evaluated for the existing traffic volumes, those were taken before COVID-19 hit and started to affect volumes along the corridor. So they are not anticipated to affect our either our volumes that we're showing today or what we're projecting.
And and since the pandemic's in place, traffic is slowly growing back to what it was, back to pre-COVID time. So things become somewhat back to normal in the future. Traffic, I think, will come back close to that. So it isn't significantly much less today, and long term, when we look in the future, things we propose will be back growing as we normally would. With the proposed southbound way station, what would happen to the West Frontage Road, Bodie Road, and County JJ interchange? It appears they disappear. And I think what happens is that South Frontage Road ties into JJ, and then it continues. There is sort of a local connection along JJ to the west. So, access to that agricultural land would have to get worked out, but it seems like the local, we didn't just make the frontage road disappear, it connects into JJ into the existing system further to the west along JJ. You mentioned French Road, but what about Capitol Drive Bridge? Will that be replaced? I would think so. And maybe you want to just touch on the overpasses that are planned to be replaced.
Sure. Yeah, a number of the overpasses along the corridor, and that would include Capitol Drive, Holland Road, Vandenbroek Road, Buchanan, Rose Hill Road. Those would all be anticipated to be replaced as part of this project, and we would be working with the local communities in terms of what kind of a cross section on the bridge would accommodate future traffic and future bike and pedestrian access needs. The primary reason for a number of those structures is just the age of the structure. They were a lot of those structures were built with the original roadway back in the 60s, and a number of them also have shoulder piers that would either make expansion potentially difficult if that's the selected alternative, or would create issues in staging construction and maintaining traffic during construction.
Again, just another reminder, please send us an email or in the chat room, just your name, address, email, so we have record of your attendance. I think just backing up maybe to the question before, I think the concern with the lower traffic volumes was in regards to the noise readings that were taken during the lower traffic, and how is that handled with the noise analysis if noise readings are taken during this pandemic time?
I can address that in a very general way, but the noise readings that are taken are correlated with the traffic that's actually out there for that day. So if you happen to have less traffic that day and get less noise because of it, well, that less noise is associated with that lower volume. But that all gets kind of worked into the model so that it will, as your traffic projection goes higher, that level of volume is accounted for within that. So it's not necessarily that the reading was taken on a day that the traffic happened to be lower, so you're going to get a lower projected traffic volume, because it's not a blanket this is the volume for the existing highway today. It's the volume for that level of traffic that we saw out there today, and we basically expand all of that up to account for the total projected traffic.
Okay. I think that's all the questions that we have at this time. You can continue to ask questions, but I think the next portion, Scott's going to go some of the displays that you would normally see at our public meetings, and these will be on the website that you can review at your leisure. But Scott wants to walk through these because this gets into a lot more detailed information that hopefully explains some things a little bit clearer. So, that back to Scott.
All right, thank you, Tom. Again, I'm going to move through these displays, and these are the displays that, in an in-person meeting that we'd have up, we'd be able to kind of talk through questions in a lot more detail, being able to point at things and point things out and why we're showing things a certain way. So I'll walk through these very quickly, or attempt to walk through these very quickly. This display is showing the partial cloverleaf alternatives for the Highway 15 interchange. Again, pointing out that this condition on the west side is very similar to what's out there today with these loop ramps. On the east side, while we have a signalized intersection out there today, we would tighten that intersection up so that traffic heading east onto Double O here would not be a free flow movement and have that weaving issue that you have there today between the interchange and Blue Mound. I will also point out with all these interchange alternatives at Highway 15, they all mention that there is some real estate impact, even though on this interchange you don't really see it here. And there is an interchange impact here associated with a parallel exit ramp that's common to all of the alternatives here. So this is the signalized alternative, and then on the corner of this display, we have the roundabout alternative shown and kind of blown up off to the side, but on the same display. This display is showing a more traditional diamond interchange alternative under both a signalized intersections and roundabout intersections for the ramp terminals. I'll point out that because of the geometrics of the roundabout exit, it would involve some additional impact at the County Forest Park area. Otherwise, the alternatives are very similar. And we do also have a diverging diamond interchange alternative at this location. A small impact at the County Forest Park. This display shows diamond alternatives for the Highway 47 or Richmond Street interchange. The signalized alternative would be the least impact in terms of real estate here compared to the roundabout alternative for the ramp terminals. And then also pointing out the potential for eliminating the access from Association Lane onto Highway 47. This display shows the diverging diamond alternative for Highway 47. Again, those real estate impacts are just a little bit more than the signalized alternative on the previous display, significantly less than the roundabout alternatives. But the locations are a little different between those different alternatives. The County Highway E or Ballard Road interchange alternatives are shown on this display. This one shows the signalized diamond alternative and the roundabout diamond alternative on this display. I will point out on this display as well that it's showing a collector-distributor system further to the east. these are all compatible with auxiliary lane systems as well as the braided ramp alternative. This display shows the diverging diamond alternative for this interchange, which again has different real estate impacts than the other alternatives. Shown here is with the auxiliary lane alternative for the area between Ballard Road and 441, which again, this is again compatible with the other alternatives for mainline between the interchanges. This display is trying to get at some of the different one of the different alternatives between the Ballard Road interchange and the 441 interchange. This one is showing the collector distributor alternative, and how that there's a kind of a separate parallel roadway between the interchanges for ramp traffic to exit and enter onto that parallel roadway before combining back in with mainline. So that weaving action between the interchange ramps is occurring off of the main line, which helps improve the safety and operation of the mainline traffic. This does have more of a real estate impact than the auxiliary lane alternative, but significantly less than the braided ramp or the braided ramp alternative. This display is showing that auxiliary lane alternative between the interchanges. That is very similar to the condition that's out there today between these two interchanges, where today we have the 2 through lanes in each direction with the additional auxiliary lane between kind of that ramp-to-ramp lane. Between that ramp-to-ramp lane allows traffic or assists traffic in weaving to and from the main line, without having to necessarily enter the main line. If you are just making that ramp to ramp move, you're not requiring traffic that's just going to make that move enter main line. So it does help with safety and operation over that condition. And this alternative is showing for the northbound direction a braided ramp alternative, which would be is a way to handle traffic from the ramp by crossing over or under what would be the opposing or the other ramp traffic that it would otherwise be weaving against. So you don't have that weave condition out there that you would have today, or even under a collector distributor system. This is operationally a very sound alternative, but does have some additional real estate impacts associated with it. On the southbound facility shown here is a collector distributor roadway system, but this display was laid out with the flyover alternatives at the system interchange in mind. So Ballard Road here has actually exited south of the system, or kind of in the middle of the system interchange on a separate ramp, is already on the right-hand side of the roadway. It would not need to weave with traffic from 441 that's also trying to get to the ramp. This display is showing the trumpet alternative for the system interchange with a collector distributor system between the interchanges, similar to what's out there today, but does combine the roadways into a single structure, dropping the number of lanes across I-41, primarily so that either the dual lane condition around that curve on the north side or the northbound direction isn't being maintained, so that we're not kind of forcing that merge maneuver closer to the freeway itself. And then for the southbound side, keeping that as a single lane until it meets with traffic that's coming from I-41, also destined for 41 southbound, instead of having that 2 lanes heading southbound that's there today. This is another trumpet alternative that is very similar to the condition that's out there today, shown on this display. Is auxiliary lanes between the interchanges, loops that are very similar in location to what's out there today, with a similar bridge configuration to what's out there today. Again, pointing out that French Road, the overpass of French Road over I-41, would be reconstructed and maintained under all of these alternatives. This display shows the 55 mile an hour speed ramps alternatives for the system interchange. The higher speed ramps allow for less speed differential from the mainline speed of traffic on 441, whereas in today's condition, you're heading north on 441 and you're going 65 miles an hour, and then you're approaching a 30 mile an hour curve, which results in safety and operational and maintenance issues around that curve with the barrier wall that's there today. This would allow traffic to make those movements at a speed more like the mainline speed itself, which is typically a safer method to do so. It does have additional impacts associated with it in terms of the real estate that would be required, and certainly would have an additional cost. This display is showing that 55 mile an hour alternative from an isometric point of view. And this display is showing the 60 mile an hour alternative for the ramps, which would again have higher real estate potential impacts than the 55 mile an hour ramp speed impacts would. One thing to note on these is that for each of these ramps, you could end up with a different design speed selected for the preferred alternative. We've shown here all 55 mile an hour ramps and all 60 mile an hour ramps to kind of simplify the displays. But in reality, we could select 55 mile an hour ramps for two of these alternatives, 60 mile an hour ramps for two of these alternatives, in order to get to that best fit of impacts versus safety benefits. Again, this is that 60 mile an hour alternative shown from an isometric point of view. This display is showing the I-41 and County Highway N interchange. Here we would again be proposing a diamond alternative with the signalized intersections, similar to what's out there today, basically replacing the pavement on the ramps and County N that's out there today, matching into the existing facility to the north and to the south. With minimal additional real estate impacts. The bridge itself, we should be able to rehab in order to accommodate traffic. That bridge was, I'll say, built wider than it needs to be for the traffic it handles right now. So there's alternatives to, within that same footprint, increase the traffic capacity if needed. Also to point out at this location, there is a park and ride off of County Highway N that we would be looking at whether or not we needed to resurface or replace the pavement on. This display is showing the I-41 and Wisconsin 55 interchange. We say the diamond alternative, but this would basically be matching in on the ramps to the recently constructed roundabouts for the ramp terminals. If necessary, we would add on to the number of lanes along Highway 55 between the ramp terminals for added capacity if traffic warrants. We would also look at with a mainline reconstruction alternative, likely be reconstructing the bridge on I-41 over Highway 55 and also Maloney Road, or I-41 over Maloney Road as part of the project. This display shows the County Highway J diamond alternative. which again is primarily matching into the ramps, reconstructing the ramps up to the limits of the previously constructed project. Not replacing the roundabouts that are out there today, but we would be replacing the County Highway J structure that is out there. That structure is another one with the shoulder piers and is an older structure in need of replacement. This display is showing the area between the County Highway 00 interchange with State Highway 441 and the system interchange with I-41. This layout is showing an auxiliary lane configuration similar to the alternatives shown previously with the auxiliary lanes, and similar to what's out there in the current condition today. At County Highway 00, under this alternative, the interchange would look and function very similar to what's out there today. This alternative is showing a partial cloverleaf alternative at the County Highway 00 interchange. The primary reason for having this alternative is that, especially with the higher speed ramp system interchange alternatives, are available, weave distance between the interchanges gets less than it is in its current condition. So we're looking at some alternatives that would increase that distance for safety and operational benefits. This would do so by moving that entrance or exit to the County 00 further to the south by the use of a loop ramp or cloverleaf ramp, and gaining that additional distance for weaving. This does have additional real estate impacts associated with it, along with some additional cost. Again, this is that partial cloverleaf alternative shown from an isometric point of view. This is a third alternative for addressing the traffic between County Highway 00 and I-41. And this is a braided ramp alternative, which would address that reduction in the amount of available weave distance by using braided ramps. Under this alternative, we would also likely be looking at potential measures at the County Highway 00 and French Road intersection as well, working with the county on solutions there. Under to kind of give a little bit more detail on the braided ramp alternative, this display shows that under an isometric point of view. I explained earlier kind of the northbound direction from County 00. I'll try to explain it again with using the southbound direction. If traffic is ultimately coming from I-41 southbound and wants to get onto County Highway 00, they would take their ramp from I-41, take the flyover ramp, come around the curve, and they would stay to the right-hand side at the split and would join with the ramp down to 00. That would also include with it traffic that was coming from I-41 northbound and also wants to get to County Highway 00, but does not include any traffic that's trying to just stay on 441 southbound. By doing so, that eliminates that weaving of traffic that occurs today between vehicles that are trying to get to alternate destinations. This display is showing the diamond alternative for the County Highway U interchange. This would be a condition very similar to what's out there today. Some minor realignments of the County Highway U and making sure that County Highway U, particularly between the interchange ramp or terminals, can accommodate future traffic growth in the area. This alternative shows the reverse diamond alternative, where we would be switching the condition of the interchange from I-41 being over County Highway U to I-41 being underneath County Highway U. This would largely fit within the same footprint that's out there today, but does have additional costs associated with it on the construction side of things. But there are some maintenance and safety benefits associated with this. Maintaining the structure or the I-41 over the County Highway U, those structures tend to ice up quite a bit. It's a county maintenance issue or concern that they need to address every winter. This condition would be easier for them to maintain. There are also safety benefits particularly for the southbound entrance ramp to I-41, where they wouldn't have as steep of a hill to climb. Vehicles, especially trucks, getting up to speed at this interchange can be an issue. This is showing that reverse diamond alternative from an isometric point of view. This display shows the diamond interchange alternative, but with the what we call an offset T alternative to it. We're potentially relocating the frontage road further to the north on the west side of the interchange, primarily so that one, you don't have the traffic at the same intersection as the other one. That reduces the number of potential conflict points at those intersections, and then it also makes it easier to see traffic that's coming from the north on County Highway U. You're not looking back over your shoulder for that traffic as much as you are in the condition today. This display is showing a roundabout alternative for the County U interchange, replacing the stop control that's out there today with roundabouts. The use of roundabouts for the ramp terminals would require moving out the frontage roads, though, which does have some additional frontage road, or does have some additional real estate impacts associated with it. Though there would be some significant safety benefits and operational benefits to this alternative as well. This display shows alternatives for the County Highway S interchange. This is the tight diamond alternative. Very similar to what's out there today, just moving the ramps maybe a little bit closer to the overpass bridge, which would also need to be reconstructed, so that you have a little bit more space between the ramps and the frontage roads, otherwise fitting for the most part within our existing right-of-way footprint. This display shows a diamond alternative with relocating or moving out the frontage roads in order to increase the distance between the frontage roads and the interchange terminals, which we would hope to address longer-term safety and operational, or potential longer-term safety and operational issues, having the frontage road and the ramps so close to each other, but does have some additional real estate impacts associated with it. And we do have another alternative as well that tries to accomplish the same thing with a different roadway alignment on the east side of the highway, connecting the frontage road to Hickory Road directly, and then relocating the frontage road on the north side to kind of line up with Hickory Road. And our final alternative for County Highway S would be a roundabout alternative for the interchange ramps and also the frontage roads themselves, which involves some realignment of the frontage roads and some real estate impacts, but less so than the other frontage road alternatives. That should be it for this. This display is showing a little bit closer than the presentation display, the interchange itself for the potential southern arterial connector interchange, pending the resolution of Brown County's study. If moving forward with this interchange, this would be likely be a diamond interchange with either signalized or stop control, depending on traffic needs, or also potentially roundabouts here. I'm jumping ahead a couple displays, and I'll move back shortly here. So we would have either a traditional signalized alternative here or roundabouts. Mentioned before, this would involve relocating the frontage roads. Shown on this alternative is an option for relocating those frontage roads. This display, or having this display, we're not precluding alternatives that would maybe have less of an impact with the frontage load relocation. Comments regarding the interchange and the layout of the interchange are certainly appreciated. Do want to point out with this alternative that the frontage road and the northwest quadrant would get kind of redirected back into Quarry Park Drive. They're under the new interchange here. There probably is not an option for maintaining that frontage road access to what would be the new roadway here. This alternative kind of lays out that entire segment, which would be the segment 1 of the Brown County Studies entire corridor. Mentioned before, this environmental process is covering the impacts of this segment of that corridor and the segment alone of that corridor. Primarily because without the interchange here, or with the addition of the interchange here, there is kind of a connectivity to the rest of the roadway system that would need to occur. So this project is looking at what would need to happen in order to maintain all of that connectivity. Shown here is, say, more traditional intersections, whether they're stop control or signalized, based on traffic warrants. This display is showing, again, that corridor with roundabouts for the frontage roads and for the ramp terminals. Pointing out, again, the Hemlock Creek runs through this area, so we would need to construct a new bridge structure or box culvert over Hemlock Creek. There is also Ashwaubenon Creek is in the south, say the southeast quadrant. It would need to be examined for potential impacts. All right. Some additional displays aside from just the interchange alternative displays that we would have had at an in-person meeting, and that will be up on our website, include this display, which shows the crash rates from 2015 to 2019. This is an update of a display that we had at our previous public information meeting. We've since had updates to our traffic numbers through 2019, so we've updated that display in order to show that, and where we have rates more than 50% above statewide average, between 0 and 50% above, and at or below the statewide average. This display is showing 2045 projected traffic under a no-build condition in what would be the morning peak hours. The red here highlighted is level of service F, or kind of a breakdown of the free flow of traffic. As you can see on this display, large segments of the corridor would be at that breakdown of traffic. This display shows that same 2045 no-build traffic operations for the afternoon peak hour, again showing some red and lots of heavier traffic areas. This display shows existing and future build alternative traffic volumes. So this would be projected traffic volumes under a build alternative. This display shows existing and future no-build traffic volumes. So this would be the projected traffic volumes under a no-build condition. This display shows the alternative typical sections that are being evaluated. One of those being the 6-lane or expansion typical section, shown here also with an auxiliary lane. One of those being the a 4-lane or kind of a reconstruct similar to what's out there today condition with an auxiliary lane potentially between interchange ramps. Showing the 6-lane alternative with a collector distributor road between some of the interchanges as needed, and the 4-lane typical section with the collector distributor between interchanges as needed. This display is showing, just kind of explaining a partial cloverleaf diamond interchange. We had a number of displays like this at the previous one for roundabouts and signalized and diverging diamonds. We wanted to add one for the partial cloverleaf for the partial cloverleaf alternative at the Highway 15 interchange, so that we kind of explain that in more detail. This display describes braided ramps, which is a new alternative at this meeting that we've gone through. The intent of the braided ramp is to remove weaving conflicts by separating the merging traffic onto different ramps. So for instance, when an entrance ramp from one interchange is braided, or goes either up or over or under with an exit ramp for the next interchange, it eliminates the traffic weaving that would occur between those ramps. And this display, and is our last one, is a matrix that we're using to evaluate alternatives along the project. For a lot of these mainline choices, weight enforcement facility choices, or interchange choices, we'll be evaluating these choices based on a number of criteria. And this display shows, say, the current evaluation of a number of these alternatives, with a number of additional information to be filled in as we progress through our preferred selection process. So this is kind of shows a blow up of the display. The full display is available on the project website. And ultimately, as we move to a preferred alternative, you would see a version of this that kind of helps to show how we selected the preferred alternative for each of these say choices or items. And that is the last display that we have to show. I don't know if we have some additional comments or questions, so I think we have a couple, so we'll address those.
We do. Thanks, Scott. Just a few more questions. And again, just a reminder for those, if you haven't sent us email or chat room, just for attendance, who you are, your address, and email would be appreciated. Talk about noise barriers west of Richmond Street. Just I can't open my patio door, able to hear my television or talk right now. Again, just maybe say, we're early in the process on noise barrier evaluation. And if Scott, you want to address the rest?
Yeah, as I mentioned before, we still haven't determined where new noise barrier would be, what we say, reasonable, feasible, or would likely be warranted based on traffic projections. We haven't determined that yet. We will be determining that ahead of what would be the public hearing scheduled for next July. So you would be able to see at that time where we think that any new noise barrier or other noise mitigation measures would be warranted. We do understand that it's a concern along the project, and we are very aware that there are a number of locations here that are either have barrier already or are near where there is barrier, and it's very easy to see where barrier may be potentially needed in the future, but we just have not completed that evaluation process yet.
Okay. Next question, will bridges that are replaced, which we mentioned earlier, like Capitol and Holland and Van Brook and Buchanan and Rosehill, will they need to be longer to accommodate more lanes? And I think the answer is yes, for the 41 typical section, which we build. So, there's 12-foot inside shoulders and outside shoulders, and it accommodates. So, yeah, they'll have to be longer to accommodate the 41. And then also, we'll be working with the local unit of government to look at, what's a typical section on that side road. What does it accommodate for the future in terms of car travel, but also bicycle, pedestrians, bus across Interstate 41. So further coordination on not only the length of it to accommodate 41, but the width of it to accommodate the side road over the top of Interstate 41. With the 441 interchange stay the same as it is today, that's one of the proposals, and we have a number of proposals that Scott went through, so just encourage you to look at those. It's a combination of flyovers and what's there today, and we want input on all these interchanges, what you prefer, and appreciate there are comments that have come in that we've documented, that people have given comments, so appreciate what we have already documented in there and continue to do that. So for those that watch it after the fact on YouTube and not live, but watch after the fact, you can continue to give us comments and feedback on these alternatives, and appreciate that. If there's any more questions in the chat box, I'm looking around our staff. I think we're good. So I want to thank everybody's time tonight in viewing that. And again, if you have questions, reach out to Scott, reach out to Missy, the contact information, review our webpage. All these displays are there to review if you have questions. But again, thank you for your input, and have a good night.